What's up YouTube, Colin here for another video on the carnivore diet. I want this to be an easy intro and also an objective look at the pros and cons, because obviously I'm biased to the carnivore diet because of the results I've seen in my life and just the ancestral implications of how it is primary way humans can eat and how I believe that wholeheartedly. There's a million caveats to that. There's a million rabbit holes you can go down. And so today I'm gonna cover some of the pros and cons of how to think about a carnivore diet, of doing a carnivore diet, and strategies to get started, or maybe doing a percentage carnivore versus percentage something else that includes more plants, for example, or more paleo or more keto. This video should arm you with the different variables that you're gonna have to consider, plus some cons that I've experienced in the past about 60 to 70 days doing about 90% carnivore diet myself. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the pros of a carnivore diet. 1, appetite. You will not understand what it's like to kill your appetite until you're doing something like carnivore. Now I have another video about carnivore plus fasting and how they're just a perfect match made in heaven, and you can see that up here, and that's gonna give you to the umpth degree of controlling appetite and getting to that place where you can literally not be hungry at all. Now that being said, when I'm on a regular feeding schedule, and like for example, I'm gonna eat my first meal after this and it's about 5 p.m. I'm looking forward to that first meal. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily hungry, but I would say I'm kind of ready to eat. And there is a big difference between those two. And I think that's very important to understand. And for those of you that get those actual hunger pains where you are like, oh, I'm so hungry, or those typical things that, or you get a headache, or you don't feel good, or maybe you get a little tired, you don't experience that on a carnivore diet. It goes away. And there's a lot of reasons for that beyond the scope of this video, but that's one of the big pros of a carnivore diet. I did a pro, now let's do a con. There is an adaptation phase moving to a mostly carnivore diet. Now there's some research that shows that moving from either eating animals or plants, within a 24 to 48 hour window, your gut microbiome actually changes to a response in your eating. And that makes sense. Humans are adaptable creatures. We lived in the wild when certain foods were available and certain foods were not. It made sense that our gut is going to adapt to that. We are highly adaptable species. We got to the top of the food chain for a reason. So it makes sense you're going to have an adaptation phase. Some of you, it might be worse than others. Some of you might go through basically crapping your brains out for 2 weeks. In the case of Joe Rogan saying he was doing that for about a week when he went full carnivore. I didn't experience that myself. I've noticed a little bit of indigestion here and there, maybe like a mild headache, but I also think that it might be connected to my dairy intake and a lot of other variables that it's really impossible to say if that's just carnivore or not. I'm also eating a bit of plant matter in my diet still. I'm not fully 100% carnivore, and I suspect that I probably wouldn't have those same side effects if I went full carnivore. But whatever it is, whatever you're doing now, if you had years of standard American diet or years of eating toxic foods and sugar and all these things like that, you're gonna have a phase where maybe you don't feel good for a little bit, but that should not be something that keeps you away from it. That is a sign that's the very thing you should do. You should give your body that detoxing. You should give your body that adaptation, because this is more ancestrally appropriate and you're gonna get better health results because of it. So while it's a con, it's actually a pro in a con's disguise, right? Like a sheep's and wolf clothing. I don't know if that works. Now for a pro, energy. When you move your metabolism over to primarily fat metabolism and running on ketones versus sugar or carbs, it's a different world. It goes hand in hand with appetite not ruining you and not owning you and food not controlling your life. You have all the energy you need in your body, in your frame. And we'll get to fat loss because that's obviously a huge pro. But having control over your energy levels and becoming a fat burner is a huge benefit. I'm not gonna go into all the reasons why it is a benefit. Let's just say it's most ancestrally appropriate. It's a better, cleaner way of running your human body. And it's like putting premium fuel in your gas tank. Let's say the unleaded would be akin to the plant kingdom, and the high grade fuel, the premium octane that only something like a Ferrari is gonna ever get in its engine, would be the animal foods. This next one is kind of a con. I think everyone's gonna be dependent. I haven't had a full 6-month experience with this because I've been eating so many of my meals at home, but it seems like if you're doing a primarily carnivore diet, you might be a bit more sensitive to plant foods slipping into your diet, and they may affect you more so than when you had them in your diet on a consistent basis. For me, I don't want to eat at restaurants. I want to be as clean and healthy and live a long time as possible, and I want that for my family as well. So in a way, I think this is a good thing for someone like me because it's going to help keep me in check. It's going to help me make better decisions when I'm traveling or when I'm out and about and there's restaurant food and it sounds good and it's easy and it's cheap and whatever. I want to stay away from that for financial reasons, but mostly for health reasons. So again, I think it's more of one of those cons in a pro's clothing or pros in a con's clothing. Depending on who you are and what your goals are, this might be something you want to mitigate and think about. So maybe that includes including certain plants in your diet on a regular basis here and there, just to kind of keep that kind of like toxic load so that your body doesn't like freak out or have like a crazy histamine or a crazy autoimmune response. That disclaimer being there, but if you have legit health issues and eating these foods affect you or maybe take you out for the count for a day or week, whatever, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And the food you find in our modern food system, especially at restaurants and in processed foods, is not something you should consume ever. That's a pro, that's a con, depending on your perspective on life. Not sure. A big pro on the carnivore diet is something that was actually the first thing for me that was a pro and that really opened my mind to this entire way of eating. Going carnivore helps you kill your sugar craving. And I've had a sugar, I would say, addiction my whole life. Obviously, growing up standard American diet, the different foods you can eat, having enough money to eat out and kind of control what goes into your body, having that flexibility, it gives you the opportunity to eat not great food. And I did that. Yeah, I would go to Whole Foods and I would still get too much dark chocolate, or I would get this like gluten-free dessert, whatever. I would get dessert at nice restaurants. I overdid it. Carnivore is the only thing, and I would say probably the past 10 years of my life, that has given me the most control over how much sugar I'm consuming. And if I were to think about the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years of my life, that's pretty profound. And in some ways, and in many ways, it probably saved my life. And for those of you that are struggling with insulin resistance, or maybe you're pre-diabetic or anything, it could actually save your life on a much shorter time scale. It's a huge pro. This next one is, I'm not sure if it's a pro or con yet. I haven't really figured that out. I haven't tracked it closely, but it's going to be cost. And I'm going to kind of wrap up the next one into this for sake of time and to make things more condensed, but cost/sourcing. You need to have skills with your sourcing. And the more skilled you are at sourcing, the more your costs come down. But if you look at the amount of food that's wasted when you're eating plants as a part of your routine, it's massive. In fact, in this country, we waste about 50% of, I think it's 50% is actual food waste, and almost all of that comes from the plant kingdom. People aren't wasting seafood and steaks. They're not like throwing that away. Usually we eat those. We prioritize those because they cost more money. We also get more nutrition out of each penny we spend on an animal product. And thus we have to eat less calories. So I haven't really figured out. If I had to guess, I would say that carnivore could be equal to what you were eating before when you were doing a mixed diet, especially if you factor in food waste. And then if you look at total calorie and mineral composition, carnivore actually is penny for penny, pound for pound, more valuable and a better bargain than foods from the plant kingdom. So that's something else you have to factor in. You can also use a lot more intermittent fasting, and you control your appetite and you're eating out less. These are all things to consider when considering the actual cost of a carnivore diet, and I plan to do a video on that, so we'll get into that more a little bit later. But for now, I'm going to say it might be a con, or it might be a pro, or it might be neutral. I'm not really sure yet. This next one is simplicity. There's nothing simpler than a carnivore diet. Yes, when you get to organ meats and things like that, it can get a little complex. That's fine. But really, 1 meal or 2 meals a day, which goes perfectly with a carnivore diet, and then limited options, the myriad of foods in the plant kingdom that can complicate things and add to recipes and just whatever, carnivore is simple. Every day I break my fast with a steak. And then after that, I either have another steak, or I have some ground beef, or I have some organs, or just whatever. Simple. And this goes with the last one we just talked about of cost. Because it's simpler, you have less food waste, you save more time, and if you value your time the way I do, and you equate time to money, then I'm starting to think that carnivore is actually a better value when you factor in all the variables. Simplicity is huge, especially when you're eating out. You look out and is there steak? Is there some wild-caught fish? No? Okay, then I'm either not gonna eat, I'm gonna fast, or I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna go to Chipotle and maybe get a bowl of meat or whatever. It makes things simple, and there's definitely savings baked into that. And this would actually move the cost from a con over to the pro column for the carnivore diet. So this last one isn't really a con, but it could be if you're not really into it. To do a carnivore diet correctly, you have to know how to cook. at least some basic cooking technique of animal products. There's no way around this. Because if you let somebody cook for you, whether that's a corporation or a restaurant, you're gonna get all the other things like the seed oils and the MSG and potentially cross-contamination from other things that you don't want in your diet. You need to understand how to cook a steak, which you can find the most recent video I just did, carnivore cooking video #1 right here. Go check it out. And then #2 is actually showing up right after that. That's gonna be my healthy go-to seafood liver pate, where I feel like I've really perfected the recipe. The most recent one I made for video #2 of the Carnivore Cooking Show was delicious. Find that out here. And right there, if you learn how to cook a steak and you have something that's easy to make and a food processor basically for your seafood, you've really gotten most of it figured out. I'm again hesitant to make this a con, but I'm trying to make an impartial video that's an unbiased look at the carnivore diet and the pros and the cons of each. So, if you don't know how to cook at all, this could pose a problem. But, as with everything in life, your greatest obstacles become the way, as Marcus Aurelius said. Your greatest struggles are opportunities for growth. If you don't know how to cook now, and you want to try something like a carnivore diet, make cooking, sourcing, and doing a carnivore diet this nice little bucket of awesomeness that's gonna make you better in every way, from your skills to impressing other people with the dishes you can make, to improving your health and nutrition, to taking your shirt off on the beach and having abs. It seems worth it. It seems worth it. This video could go on and on. I actually have a lot more pros and cons, but I think I'm gonna cut it short because it's a little bit enough for one day. What did you find in this video that maybe the big ones I'm missing, or do you have comments on the ones that I put in there as a pro or a con? Oh, I almost forgot. Before we end the video, a really big pro, which is gonna coincide with this, is fat loss. Effortless fat loss. I've been a lean guy my whole life, and I've thought of myself as a healthy eater my whole life. In the past few years, I kind of veered a little bit off that course a little bit, being a CEO and being busy and having a kid and all these different things, right? But I've still made a point to be mostly grain-free, gluten-free, paleo-style way of eating. And I've always kind of paid attention to my carbs, even when I was eating too many. Carnivore has let me easily and effortlessly shred body fat while feeling full and satiated and enjoying every freaking meal. Weight loss plus enjoyment, those are two pros right there. It resets your metabolism, your body set point. It's in conjunction with your biology instead of fighting it, which is like what calories in, calories out, high carb diet, low fat would do. What did I leave out in today's video? Are there any pros or cons I didn't mention? Each one of these probably needs its own video for sure. And maybe if you drop some comments below, let me know which one of those you'd like me to unpack more, then I can get to that. I think you can guess at this point that a carnivore diet is mostly pros for me. And when I get to that point where this adaptation phase and where I really figure out my eating plan, that first con is just gonna go poof. Drop them below. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe. Hey, Colin here. Thanks for watching that video. I got a free PDF for you, The 7 Principles of Living Wild. Short and sweet, not long, not gonna be a novel you have to read or anything, just a simple reference of the things that make you a healthy human. So click on the button below, get that right now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.